My father raised his glass and said, "Natalie, you should learn from your brother, Daniel. Stop wasting time on that foolish startup of yours." Laughter rippled around the table. I forced a smile, then the dining room TV lit up. Breaking news. Natalie Walker, secret billionaire behind Ironclad Systems revealed, net worth, $11.2 billion. Mom's fork clattered to the floor. Daniel's smirk collapsed. I stood, slid my chair back, and whispered, "Excuse me. My board is waiting." And that was only the beginning. Before I dive in, hit like and tell me where you're watching from. It's strange looking back now how ordinary those years felt, like I was just moving through life in the shadow of my brother. Daniel was the golden child, the one teachers praised, the one my parents showed off to their friends. Daniel made honor roll again. Mom would beam at dinner. Daniel's professor says he's Ivy League material, and me, I was the afterthought, the one they'd half-heartedly pat on the shoulder before asking, "So, are you still playing around with that little computer project of yours?" I still remember the day I brought home my first prototype, a rough circuit board wired together in my cramped apartment. I'd skipped meals for days, pouring every ounce of energy into making it work. My hands were shaking with excitement when I showed Dad, thinking, hoping he'd finally see me. He looked at the board, frowned, and said, "That's nice, Natalie, but maybe you should think about law school or at least something practical." Daniel laughed in the corner, tossing me a look that said it all. "You'll never measure up." Those little moments pile up heavier than you realize. I learned to hide my victories. The small grants I won from university competitions. The angel investor who gave me my first $20,000 check. The night my code finally scaled past 1 million users in testing. None of it mattered to them. To my parents, I was still the kid with the foolish startup. To Daniel, I was the punchline at family dinners. I used to think maybe I was the problem, that I wasn't impressive enough, that my dreams were too strange, too unrealistic. But then I remembered the hours no one else saw. Nights when the apartment walls hummed with the sound of my servers, when I fell asleep with half-eaten ramen by my keyboard, when my fingers blistered from typing, but I refused to stop. Success wasn't a question of if for me, it was always a question of when. But family has a way of making you doubt yourself. There was the Christmas party when Dad introduced Daniel to his business friends as our pride and joy, and introduced me as our daughter. She's dabbling in tech. I stood there holding my paper cup of eggnog, smiling like it didn't cut straight through me. Another time, Mom pulled me aside after church and whispered, "Maybe it's time to stop embarrassing yourself, Natalie. Your brother can help you get a real job." Her words weren't cruel on the surface, but they carried the sharp edge of dismissal. I nodded, swallowed the lump in my throat, and went home to write another 2,000 lines of code. If you've ever been underestimated, you know it can feel like gasoline poured over fire. Every rejection, every laugh behind your back, every time someone looks at you and sees less. It doesn't just sting, it fuels you. And it fueled me for years. While Daniel strutted around in tailored suits bragging about internships and connections, I sat quietly at my secondhand desk, building something they couldn't even imagine. I didn't need their applause. I didn't need their belief. I needed only the silence, the glow of my screen, the feeling of moving closer to something enormous. Every sacrifice, the missed birthdays, the skipped vacations, the loneliness, I carried it because I knew. One day, they would see. One day, the startup they mocked would become the empire they never believed possible. And so when Dad raised his glass at that dinner table, comparing me to Daniel, telling me to stop wasting my life, it wasn't the first time I'd heard those words, but it would be the last. The night it all cracked open didn't feel special at first. It was just another one of those mandatory family dinners, the ones where Mom fussed over the table settings, Dad invited his business friends, and Daniel strutted in like the star attraction. I almost didn't go. I had 3 acquisitions closing in Asia and a board meeting lined up. But Mom insisted, and part of me still carried that old hope maybe this time would be different. I walked in wearing a plain black sweater and jeans, the kind of outfit that made me blend into the background. Daniel arrived in a tailored suit, his Rolex flashing under the chandelier. The comparison started before I even sat down. "Look at Daniel," one of Dad's friends said admiringly. sharp, confident, just like his father. And then came the punch. Dad raised his glass, cleared his throat, and looked straight at me. "Natalie," he said, his tone heavy with disappointment, "you should learn from your brother. Stop wasting time on that foolish startup of yours. Daniel's the pride of this family." The words weren't new. I'd heard versions of them all my life. But that night, something inside me shifted. I smiled faintly as if it didn't matter, but deep down I felt a line being drawn. Maybe they thought I'd laugh it off. Maybe they thought I'd sit there quietly like always. Then out of nowhere, the dining room TV flickered to life. Someone must have left it on mute in the background because suddenly bold red letters scrolled across the screen, breaking news. The room turned toward it. My chest tightened as I saw my own face appear. Identity revealed, the anchor's voice cut through the chatter. After years in stealth mode, the mysterious force behind Ironclad Systems is confirmed. Founder and CEO Natalie Walker, net worth $11.2 billion. The room went dead silent. My mother's fork clattered against the china. Daniel's smirk faltered into open shock. Dad coughed into his wine glass, sputtering. His friends leaned forward, squinting at the screen as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. I stayed perfectly still, letting the silence hang heavy. Inside, my heart was pounding, but not from fear. It was release. All those years of doubt, all those nights alone, building what they dismissed as nothing, it was right there in bold headlines for the world to see. Mom finally broke the silence. "This must be a mistake," she whispered, almost pleading. "Natalie, Ironclad Systems." As if on cue, the dining room doors swung open. Marcus, my CFO, stepped in, holding a tablet glowing with live numbers. "Apologies for the interruption," he said, scanning the stunned faces, "but the story's out. Ms. Walker, your valuation just jumped to $11.8 billion after the market reaction. We're receiving calls from Singapore, London, and Dubai headquarters." I rose from my chair, slowly smoothing the hem of my sweater. "Thank you, Marcus," I said calmly, as if this were just another meeting. Then I glanced at my parents, at Daniel, at the entire room that had treated me like I was nothing. "Excuse me," I whispered. "My board is waiting." The sound of my chair sliding back against the hardwood floor echoed louder than any applause Daniel had ever received. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. And I didn't throw their words back in their faces. I didn't need to. The truth had already detonated in the middle of that polished dining room, louder than anything I could have said. As I walked out, Marcus at my side, I could feel every pair of eyes on me. My parents' frozen Daniel, pale and slack-jawed Dad's friends, whispering urgently to each other. I didn't turn back. Let them stew in their silence. The moment the cool night air hit my face, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Notifications poured in. CNBC, Bloomberg, Fortune, the Wall Street Journal. The headlines were all the same. The invisible billionaire revealed. Stock tickers screamed across my screen. My company's valuation was climbing in real time. I slid into the back of my car, Marcus handing me the tablet. "We've already scheduled a call with Singapore," he said. "The Prime Minister's office wants confirmation about the infrastructure deal." I nodded, scanning the numbers. Billion after billion rolled upward like the universe was finally keeping score. And yet my chest wasn't tight with anxiety. It was calm. I'd spent 5 years building ironclad systems in silence, in the shadows, brick by brick, acquisition by acquisition. Tonight wasn't chaos. It was the unveiling of something inevitable. Meanwhile, the calls from my family kept flooding in. 10 from Mom, 12 from Dad, 3 voicemails from Daniel that all sounded the same disbelief, straining into panic. I didn't answer any of them. For years, I'd bent to their opinions, craved their approval, let their doubt define me. Tonight, I chose silence. Instead, I poured myself into work. I drafted responses to governments, negotiated contracts, finalized an acquisition we'd been chasing for months. By midnight, Ironclad controlled an even larger slice of the tech industry than we had that morning. Every signature, every deal was a quiet blade drawn against the family that had mocked me for dreaming too big. The next morning, the world's headlines carried my name, Natalie Walker, the secret architect of modern tech. The startup they laughed at now valued higher than Microsoft and Apple combined. Interviews piled up, invitations from governments, private jets waiting on tarmacs, and my family, they were drowning. I heard through whispers that Dad's business friends had already called him asking why he never mentioned his daughter's empire. Mom's country club, the one that had rejected me 3 times, suddenly extended me a personal invitation. Daniel's company stock had started sliding investors, realizing Ironclad controlled the very chip supply his firm relied on. Did I gloat? Did I march back into their mansion to rub it in? No, I didn't have to. Silence was louder than any revenge. All I had to do was keep moving forward. Let the empire speak for me. Sometimes the sharpest counterattack isn't fire or fury. It's the sound of a phone buzzing with missed calls you'll never return. By sunrise, the war had begun, not in boardrooms or stock markets, but in my voicemail. "Sweetheart, it's Mom." The first message chimed her voice tight, almost rehearsed. "I hope you know how proud we are of you. Why don't you come by for dinner tonight? Just the family." The next was Dad's. "Natalie, listen. We should talk business. With my experience and your company, we could really make something of this." His tone dripped with the same authority he'd used all my life, as if nothing had changed. Then came Daniel, less polished, more frantic. "Natalie, we need to discuss the chip supply. Ironclad can't just look we're family, right? Don't do this to me." The irony nearly made me laugh. For years, I was the nuisance, the kid wasting her time. Now overnight, I was leverage. I ignored every call. Silence was still my weapon. But I couldn't ignore what happened next. They showed up unannounced at my office. From the 72nd floor of Ironclad's glass headquarters, I saw them through the lobby cameras. Dad straightening his tie nervously, Mom gripping her handbag like a lifeline, Daniel pacing like a caged animal. For once, they looked small. Marcus appeared at my door. "Do you want me to send them away?" I thought about it. God, how tempting it was. But no, I wanted them to see. I wanted them to step inside the empire they swore would never exist. When they entered, their jaws dropped at the rows of analysts, the walls of live market data, the quiet efficiency of a company running the world's infrastructure. Daniel's eyes darted to the global map glowing across the main screen, our servers pulsing across continents. Dad cleared his throat, trying to mask his awe. "Impressive operation you've got here." "It's not an operation," I corrected coolly. "It's the backbone of modern technology." They exchanged glances, scrambling for footing. Mom leaned in her voice, soft, coaxing. "Darling, all we ever wanted was the best for you. We didn't mean what we said back then. You know we love you." Her words should have warmed me. Instead, they rang hollow, brittle like glass. Daniel finally snapped. "You're destroying my company. Do you realize Ironclad controls every chip we need? You can't do this. It's not fair." I met his panic with calm. "Business is business, Daniel. Isn't that what Dad always said?" He flinched, but I didn't linger. I turned back to Marcus. "Send them the standard partnership documents. If they want supply, they'll pay market price. No exceptions." The meeting was over. As security escorted them out, I caught my reflection in the glass wall, composed, unshaken, a woman no longer begging for approval. For the first time, I realized the struggle wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs. It happened 3 days later. I was reviewing a deal in the executive boardroom when Marcus leaned in. "Ma'am, they're here again. This time, they won't leave." I already knew who he meant. My family. I sighed, closed the folder, and said, "Send them in." The doors swung open. Dad walked in first, his confidence cracked, but not gone. Mom followed, her face powdered with the kind of effort that said she'd practiced this moment in the mirror. Daniel trailed behind, pale, jittery, the mask of superiority long since stripped away. The silence was thick until Dad finally spoke. "Natalie, we were wrong." 3 words I'd never thought I'd hear. But instead of satisfaction, all I felt was a cool detachment. Wrong about what, Dad? that my company was a joke that I should give up. He swallowed hard. We underestimated you. We didn't see what you were building, and now we need your help. There it was. Not love, not pride, need. Daniel stepped forward, his voice cracking. My company's bleeding. Without your supply chain, we can't survive. You can't just cut us off. We're family. Family. That word again, thrown like a life raft only when convenient. I stood slowly, the skyline of the city glowing behind me, casting my shadow across the room. Family, I repeated softly. Where was family when you mocked my startup? Where was family when you told me to quit to be more like Daniel? Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. I turned to Dad. You spent my whole life telling me, business is business. You said it when you passed me over for opportunities. You said it when Daniel was praised and I was ignored. Well, you were right. His face fell. Natalie, I didn't mean. But I cut him off. Business is business. An ironclad doesn't do favors, not for competitors, not even for blood. The room went quiet, the kind of silence that burns deeper than shouting. Mom finally whispered, "We're losing you." I shook my head. No, you lost me years ago when you decided my worth before I had a chance to prove it. Marcus appeared in the doorway with his tablet. Ms. Walker, the EU delegation is waiting for you. I nodded. Then I turned back to my family one last time. This boardroom is my family now. These screens, these deals, this empire. You don't have to understand it, you just have to live with it. Their faces blurred as I walked out, but I'll never forget the echo of my father's old words, turned back on him, final and sharp. Business is business. The headlines kept coming for weeks. Natalie Walker, the shadow billionaire who rewrote tech. The startup they laughed at now, an empire. Every time I saw those words, I thought about the years my own family couldn't see me. And yet I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. The silence I carried for so long had already done its work. I didn't need apologies shouted or banners of regret. Their faces in that boardroom, their shock, their desperation, that was enough. Sometimes revenge doesn't look like fire and fury. Sometimes it's quieter, sharper. It's walking away without raising your voice. It's letting the world speak the truth you always knew. I built Ironclad to prove to myself I could. But in the end, it proved something else entirely, that the girl they dismissed had become the woman who held the power to redraw the map. I don't crave their validation anymore. I don't wait for their praise. My life isn't measured by their approval. It's measured in what I chose to build when no one believed in me. And the sweetest part, they'll never underestimate me again. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family, told your dreams were foolish? Share your story in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story hit home, tap like and subscribe. Because sometimes the quietest success is the loudest revenge.